So this is Camp Creator.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Kendrick. I am the writer of Camp Creator.
At last, the day is here. We actually make this whole thing run.
I want to go inside every building, see every studio, and meet every other student.
A musical all about this young, aspiring singer-songwriter who goes to a summer arts camp where she meets other creative kids, collaborates for the first time, works on her own project. It's all about young people expressing themselves, finding collaboration, and having the resources to express themselves. So it's a story of young artists who are true artists and just how meaningful that is, and the music helps tell that story. I'm super proud of the music.
In you, Audrey, I see a little bit of me. I know just what you mean to hold on to a dream.
And I'm very excited to share that I have had the musical performed as a stage reading at the Homewood Theater. And I had it filmed by my brother, filmmaker Ted Kendrick. And I'm very excited to be showcasing the video of the stage reading with y'all. And I wanted to give y'all a little tour of my editing timeline as I've been editing the video of the stage reading, and just give y'all a little glimpse behind the scenes of what it looks like to put the video together, because there are some things that are pretty sophisticated that came together with a little bit of I guess, like, how do I put it? Like, there's some professional sophistication, but there's some things that are also pretty simple at the same time and pretty straightforward with the edit. And so I just want to kind of show y'all what it actually looks like in practice. So without further ado, let's start zooming in and give you a look at the making of Camp Creator. The first thing you'll notice, I think, are the video tracks. I only have 4 video layers, and that's it. Let's zoom in and show you each one what they're doing. The first one is video track 1, is just the raw footage, and I have 4 separate shots that I've been able to choose from at any given time that I'm editing between. After I chose what shot I wanted to use, because I had them separated out on 4 individual video layers as well. After I lined it up and decided what shot I wanted to use, I condensed it all to a single video channel, just to kind of lock in the editing choices I had made and clean up the timeline just visually to make it a little more organized. So I didn't have layers of video stacked on each other. I had it all just in a line, a little more straightforward, once I was willing to kind of lock in that decision. And is that a little scary, locking in creative decisions? It can be, because then it's like, well, if I ever want to change my mind, it's a little harder to decide, oh, instead of using this shot, I want to use that shot for this time. But that's still not a super complex thing, and I could make that change pretty easily if I wanted to. But I always think it's a good process, like being able to lock in creative decisions. And so I think that this is just indicative of that philosophy here. So my second video track are these titles that come in. You can see that I have each song subtitled out as to when that starts, just to kind of help, provide a visual for how the show is, how the show is organized, and introduce you to each song as they happen. I think that that's kind of a nice, how do I put it? Just a nice little luxury. I also have credits on this this video layer, and here you can see an example of just general credits at the beginning of the show. During the overture, I have just everyone listed out and all the collaborators that were a part of it. And so that is what that video layer is for. And the other 2 video layers are, I think, just used at the end when I had some things stacked for this graphic at the very end, when I just had the photo of the cast photo at the end after our bows, some titles, and a fade to black on top of that. So that just took a couple more layers. I don't know why off the top of my head I don't have anything in this bottom layer, but there might have been something under that was removed afterward. I don't remember off the top of my head. But overall, you can see that the video editing is actually pretty simplified. And I think that speaks to, this is such a long, it's a long video. It's a 2-hour show. It's a 2-hour musical. And so finding ways to make editing simple, efficient, and organized was really important to make this, I guess, just to be productive on this project, to be able to move forward with organization, with clear direction, with decisions made. Anything I could do to make that happen, and simplify the editing process, made it easier, because it's really not that daunting looking at the video editing when it's all condensed like this. And even when you zoom in, um, just anything I can do to make it not daunting, right, is definitely important. But that changes when we start to look at the audio layers, because you can see this is audio layer 43, and I just had this in the timeline just for reference. This is just an export of the audio, but in practice, in practice, I have 42 other layers of audio, and you can see most of it's muted. And so let's take a tour through the audio layers of the edit for the Camp Creator staged reading. And this is when it gets a little more daunting, and I'm gonna try my best to explain it, and I think it'll make sense when we kind of dissect it bit by bit. And you see there's kind of repeating patterns. And so, for example, what's going on with kind of these layers is the same thing that's going on with those layers and these layers. And so let's just take a look at these first 3 segments, and that'll be a good example for what's going on. Because what I was able to do is I got all the audio off the mixing board from the theater, separated out by microphone. So each kind of section of layers here is a different set of tracks corresponding to the processing for each microphone. And that's all being remixed in DaVinci Resolve. But a lot of the actual mixing happened outside of this from my collaborator, Adam Murdoch. So let's talk about how I was able to kind of organize the audio so that I could send it off to him and then re-import it to be able to do the final mixing touches in DaVinci. So let's break down that. For example, just we'll start at the top, and this was the first microphone listed, and so we'll just kind of use this as an example. It doesn't even actually matter that we focus on a spot with audio, but just for the sake of being able to see waveforms, let's kind of find a spot. So this is Kate. She is one of the ensemble members, and she's the first because all the microphones are in order, and she was on the end of the row. And so we see this audio file, which is labeled O2. That's just the raw mixer audio, and you can see that it's O2 because it's kind of separated out randomly. The mixer just kind of starts new audio files. It just kind of started randomly every like 25 minutes or so. And so the first step was just lining everything up, putting it all in a row, all the audio files in sequence, 1, 2, 3. And then what I did is I re-exported everything out by song so that I could be better organized by like, all right, this isn't just Kate's channel 1, 2, 3 split up randomly, but here's Kate's channel for the audition song. Here's Kate's channel for You Can Be You, right? And then it was from those exports that I resent everything out to mixer Adam Murdoch, who mixed all the channels, applied effects, did EQ, compression, actually did vocal treatment. And then I re-imported the treated processing. You don't see this step, but I combined, he sent me like mixed audio files for each song, and then I combined those mixed files into a single file for each act for each microphone, because that just made it a little bit easier for me as I was editing. And so this is Act 2 mixed audio for Kate, and then this is Act 1 mixed audio for Kate. And you can see that that's true for each layer as well, right? So this is Lexi, who's labeled Cadence because that was her character's name. And right, you have the raw audio, you have the re-exported by song audio, and then you have the mixed audio. And then that's what I was actually working with and doing most of the audio editing on. And you can see that most of the editing that's happening is on these unmuted tracks, right? And everything that's just organizing the audio, that's muted. There's no actual really editing happening there. But you zoom in on here and there's all these like crossfades and stuff. Let's take a look and see if we can kind of reveal anything by looking at some of these crossfades. What's exactly happening there? So most of this editing is just volume writing. So taking out parts where Lexi isn't talking, that's at -15. And then she comes back in and that's at -2.5, right? So that's just volume adjustments, using editing to do those volume adjustments. That's what I did basically at the end of the process. But I did use the equalizer essentially for whenever a mic was bumped or there were any plosives, and I used the equalizer in DaVinci to take care of those myself. And I wonder if we can find any examples. I know my mic was actually pretty bad about plosives. So I wonder if these little micro crossfades are plosive handling. Let's see. Yeah, this is a good example of like what plosive treatment looks like. So you can see that I've done this little crossfade here. So you can see that I have the equalizer turned on and I'm using a high pass filter to get rid of these low frequency plosive sounds, where if I'm using and that's kind of like hitting the microphone because we didn't have any pop filters, I'm editing that out just with a quick EQ, and then that is gone in the surrounding audio, but it's present on this little chunk. And really, that's most of the editing that I did after Adam did his mixing of each channel, right? I'm just doing final volume adjustments, EQ adjustments for plosives, and then that's really how everything was finished. Adam did most of the hard work of actually processing the audio and doing the more kind of nuanced, informed, creative, and technical decisions with the audio processing. I just did the final cleanup, and that's what you see on this timeline. But it's a long stack just because I've preserved, okay, well, I have at any given point, I'm able to re-export or go back to the raw file if I ever want to pull from that. That's still on the timeline. That's still lined up and in sync with everything. But then I also have the mix that Adam did alongside it as well. And that's just all preserved on the timeline at any given point. So I could go back, re-reference things, re-export as needed. So the audio's there's a lot going on with the audio, but it's all pretty simple. It's all pretty straightforward. It's the same processes happening across most of the tracks. And so it's pretty organized, even though it seems a little bit like it's just this big stack of things going on. It really wasn't that daunting, and it wasn't too much to take care of. And really, most of the work happened pretty easily. And even for Adam, he was able to, once he figured out a vocal processing kind of signal chain, he was able to apply most of that chain to all of the mics in the same way. But there were some individual treatment for individual mics and individual singers that did require slightly different processing. So I guess just all that to say is most of the work for this editing project, a lot of it was finding a workflow and applying the same process to most of the channels, right? Most of it was pretty straightforward and doing the same thing across all variations. And really the nuance is just listening to it and using your ear to know when to go, okay, well, we're going to do things a little bit different for this channel, or I'm going to just have to know when I want to ride the faders, because, it's not just a science, it is art. And so just throughout the process, also keeping ears open. And that's a big important thing to just keep in mind as well. At the end of the day, it's the music, and we have to make whatever decision helps bring the music to life. For example, at not just a technical basic processing level, there are times where I'm using reverb either artistically or to help kind of make a note last longer in the air. And I'm trying to make it pretty subtle, but there are some examples of times where I'm fading in. Let me see if I can find an example. I think this happens at the beginning of the first time. Yeah, so you can see that I crossfade from, here's the regular mix, Joe mix, JL mix, and then at this point I've re-exported this section of audio, applied a reverb to it, and I crossfade into that, and I crossfade out at the end of that little section at the beginning of the song. And that's just for the sake of the style, for the sake of bringing the music, it's just using that specifically to achieve certain results at certain times. It's all about knowing when to kind of use that artistic flair at the right time. But in general, this was a pretty straightforward process, and there wasn't too much applying effects stylistically like that. Most of it's just, well, let me take the performance that was recorded live and do my best just to make sure everyone can be heard clearly, everything is balanced. I'm using panning in a way that suits the room and helps bring it to life for the audience at home, but also just does justice to everyone, makes everything feel alive, and kind of brings you into the show the best that I can while you're watching it digitally, right? To just do my best to make the at-home experience live as best as it can feel, right? So that's the goal. So I hope that this was all interesting. There's not really much else I have to say about the editing process. It was really fun, but most of it was just lining up all the footage, lining up all the audio, processing it, choosing angles, and it was really pretty straightforward. And it's scary having it be so straightforward sometimes because I come from a short film background. I come from making short films where I'm choosing every shot super intentionally, every second counts. And this is something where it's because it's live, it's like, well, it's just dealing with we have one take and it's just editing between different angles of that one take, right? And it's like it's not the editing process is usually when I'm working on a film, it's a super creative process where I'm deciding what to keep, what to edit, what to change, how to augment it with different effects and materials in post. But because this is a live show, my job is just making sure what's there sounds the best that it can sound. And so, yes, it's a 2 hour video, but most of it was really straightforward. And though this might seem like a lot, and there was a good bit of effort and attention put into the audio editing. Like I said, like I've been saying, really this was a pretty straightforward process where I was able to let go of things a lot more than I usually do for editing. But all this to say is just thank you all so much for watching and being interested in the process enough to watch a timeline tour like this where we can get pretty technical. And you may notice that there's things that I didn't bring up, like color correction, because I really didn't feel the need to do too much color correction. I felt like the footage that Ted got reflected the room well, just straight out of the box. And usually I'm doing some kind of color grading, but that was a step that I didn't even have to take for this project because I was happy with how everything looked out of the gate. That's really rare to feel like I can be that loose with the footage. And there might be individual shots where like I slightly adjusted exposure here and there. But really, in general, across this project, there was no additional color correction or color grading. And it was fun to kind of feel like I could just trust all the elements to speak for themselves. And I think that that's really a theme with this project is, everyone did their part and I was able to just trust them to know their stuff, and all I can do in the edit and as a director and just throughout the process is all I can do is just lift up the work that all my collaborators are doing and make sure that it shines in the best way it can and make sure there's nothing technical holding back their contributions. And so I really felt like that's all I was doing was just helping everyone look the best version of themselves. I hope that that's what carries across because that's what I tried to do. But yeah, like I said, just everyone, thank you so much for watching this video, being interested. And I hope that it's been insightful. I hope it's been encouraging. I hope you've learned something. And without further ado, I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Thank you so much for watching. But without further ado, I'll let you go.